Hey Alex, I guess we're live on the internet.
Oh, are we? That's great.
Yeah,
It's
I don't know.
yeah.
I guess it's our job, so we'll just keep going with it because I don't know what else to do.
This is our job. This is what we do for a living.
I woke up this morning and I finished doing Spoon with Scoops around midnight last night because I didn't want to start it until I didn't want to watch the first NFL game because I
Right.
had Peyton Manning in one of my leagues, not the one that we're in, but in a different one. Went spectacularly.
Yes,
Seven
clearly.
touchdowns, 50 points. Nothing else even basically has to happen, and I am
Yeah.
set for this week. So around the time that that game started taking a turn, I was like, okay, I'll go and start the show. But then I woke up this morning. I don't know if you've had this before. I'm
Mm.
sure everyone has had this moment where my alarm went off and I looked at it. I was like, why would I do that? It's Saturday. I should sleep in. What am I doing getting up at 7:45? And then realizing very quickly, oh no, oh no, it's not Saturday.
I've had that a few times where I've definitely woken up and thought it was the wrong day. Not necessarily Saturday, but yeah, I've definitely had those moments where I've woken up and was like, oh yeah, no, everything's fine. Holy shit, I was supposed to be at an appointment like 3 hours ago. Shit, shit, shit.
Yeah, so that was fun. But Spook and Scoops was fun as well. I've been
It's
playing.
always fun. It's always a good time watching you get the shit scared out of you.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was interesting. There was a tweet from Sean Elliott yesterday, who used to work for GFW and CGW, when those were magazines back in Ziff Davis, back when there were magazines. And he's over at Irrational now as a level designer. He worked on Bioshock Infinite, and he sort of tweeted about horror games. And one of the things he mentioned was that he sometimes gets overwhelmed playing those games because horror games in general have a tendency to never ever let up, and in the sense that when the games do let up, it's only in the context of the threat having disappeared. So,
Right.
like the monster that's chasing you or whatever has gone away and the music has died down. But everything around you in the space is still very foreboding and threatening, so you can't ever actually calm down. And
No.
he pointed to the very few games that actually sort of engage in this idea of giving the player a true break. Silent Hill 4, The Room, which didn't even start as a Silent Hill game and just got branded later. That game has this sort of narrative circle where you're always coming back to this room, and it's in your apartment, and it's a safe place. And then that also gives the designers a lot of leeway to start really screwing with you because they can turn that safe place against you. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and even as someone that enjoys these games that never let up, I can certainly sympathize with people who find that just completely overwhelming and too much.
Yeah, I mean that's me in a nutshell. I think I've said before on here that my problem with horror games is not that I don't like being scared. It's the act of actually having to go through with the stuff that you're seeing, as opposed to in a horror movie where you can just watch other people make the dumb decisions for you.
And that's what
Um,
that's what happens when you watch people play horror games. Like that's
yeah,
always sort of the experience that gets relayed to me about people that either enjoy watching other people do that or watching me do it. Is that it gives them the same fun and thrill ride of sort of a passive engagement that you get from a film, but you also get to see these games where you also get to watch someone freak out alongside with it, which just allows you to sort of laugh at them, and that sort of helps cut the tension of what's happening on screen.
and that is why I think people love Spooking with Scoop so much, because you're a good foil for that. You're a good person to watch get the shit scared out of you,
Well,
and
and I try to explain it to people, and I don't blame them if they don't believe me, but anytime I actually get scared or get freaked out doing that, it is 100% genuine because I try to put myself as isolated as possible to sort of like let my guard down. It's why I have a drink or two before I start so that some of the nerves go away. It's why we do it at night. It's why I do it by myself. Whereas I watch these other guys that do it on YouTube, and not to take away any of their success and popularity, because they are clearly doing much better than I am and are making a lot more money than I am doing what they're doing. But uh, none of it comes across as genuine because they're doing it in the day, and the reactions are so hyper exaggerated. So I sort of like, you know, I try and actually get scared, which is
right.
also what makes the feature all the more terrifying. Because sometimes I'm like, why do I do this? It's not. This isn't fun.
Well, you do it for our entertainment, for one thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um,
The dance, monkey dance, and that's fine.
your sacrifice is not unappreciated, believe me, because it's because of that that I have been able to sort of observe several horror games. I probably wouldn't even try on my own, just because someone tells me they're scary, and I'm like, yeah, you know, and that's, I mean, yeah, granted, I'm a giant wuss, but that's fine. But yeah, and to your point earlier, the safe place thing is something that I have definitely had with those games as well. Like, I don't like games where I feel like there's no place for me to kind of take a breather, you know? And it's like you said with those games, like a lot of times, you know, even in a quiet moment, the next corner or the next room or something's coming around, and you're just like, nah, man, I know what's coming. I can't do it. I just can't progress. And I don't know. I think I need to get over that, because I really do want to play Amnesia, and I really do want to play Outlast. I'm just having to steel myself pretty hard to actually sit in and start in on those.
Well, those games are tough, too, because they purposely make, they take away guns, right? So they take away the one thing that makes the player feel safe, in a game like Dead Space, where Dead Space is tense, but, the reason these other games are so much scarier is because as a player, all you can do is run. All you can do is hide, and they've taken away most of the proactive engagement you can have with the world around you, which makes them all the scarier. But you haven't been playing many scary games this week. You've been playing Rayman Legends. I always want to say Origins.
I did, yeah. Well, I mean, I actually played a little bit of Origins too, just to kind of remind myself on a couple of things. But yeah, I mostly basically from PAX on to Tuesday, I was just playing Rayman Legends a whole bunch. That's a really good game. That is
we're gonna, you know what? I'm gonna interrupt you quickly. People are saying there's a bunch of audio lag. I think I'm gonna stop this broadcast and start it really quickly again and see if that fixes it for people.
Okay.
All right.
We'll be right back.
All right, Alex. I can make no guarantees that this fixed the audio, but as we learned very quickly, when you stop one of these, you can't start it again.
Funny how that works.
And then the way our system is set up means that then people have to refresh the chat page to get the new code that's put in the back end, and then it's fun to just watch the chat number just like freak out as everyone is just rapidly refreshing. So if the audio is lagging, we apologize. I'm not sure how much we can really do on our end because we are sort of at the mercy of Google. Sometimes this works perfectly. Sometimes this has some issues. But as you were saying before, you're in the. I guess you're done with Rayman Legends, right?
I am done with Rayman Legends. Review is up on the site. I gave it 5 stars. It's probably my favorite game I played all year at this point. Which is to say that I haven't necessarily been as impressed with this year's crop of games as I was last year's. But so far, Rayman is the one that has given me the most just immediate and intense joy playing through it.
So are you a platformer guy by nature, or is it just Rayman specifically?
I am, especially 2D stuff. That was kind of my jam growing up. It's been, I haven't fallen too heavily in love with anything from like the last several years. I think the last 2 Rayman games would certainly be up there. I think a couple of the new Super Mario Brothers games from the last several years would be up there, but maybe not the most recent ones.
What about Galaxy?
Galaxy, well, that's not really a platformer exactly, is it?
Okay, all right. So, okay.
It's a 2D game.
All right, we're saying
stuff,
2D.
like,
okay, we're saying 2D. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I wasn't being that specific. Okay, I was gonna say, if you are like Brad Shoemaker and have not played the Galaxy games, like I'm literally going to tear my hair out because those are like both of those are some of the best games of like the last 10 years.
Yeah, easily. I don't think I haven't really played those. So
you haven't? Oh my God! What is this fucking website that?
Oh wait, are you talking about Mario Galaxy?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about something else entirely. I'm an idiot.
Oh.
No, I reviewed the first one, for God's sakes. Yeah, those games are awesome. Those are some of the best.
If you hadn't played it.
Yeah, no. As 3D platformers go, the Mario Galaxy games are some of the best ever made. Totally. Yes, I'm totally with you on that. When you just said Galaxy, I was like, wait, my brain just shut off in a different direction. Right. I don't know why.
Oh, I almost had a meltdown on camera.
Yeah, no,
all right.
I've played both of them. They're both awesome.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
but no, Rayman is something pretty special as far as those kind of games go. I mean, the UbiArt stuff was already impressive in Origins. That was, so it was kind of a given that the game was going to look great. But they didn't change it drastically. Like the platforming is still very similar, but the difficulty balance and the way the world progression and the level progression is designed and all the extra crap they've thrown in there, like that soccer game that Jeff and Brad totally lost their shit over in the quick look. All that stuff is really, really fun. It's really, really well done. And the touchscreen stuff, granted, in the quick look, they were playing the Xbox version, which requires you to press a button to do a lot of that stuff, and it just kind of automatically does it, and that's not as much fun. When I was playing it on the Wii U and the Vita, I really liked most of the touchscreen stuff, especially the Murphy levels. And I know some people have complained about that stuff being heavy in there. Honestly, with the actual touchscreen, I thought that stuff was a delight. I thought that game was super fun, pretty much from top to bottom.
Yeah, I was asking you on this on AIM yesterday about this as I figure out which version of this I play, and I think I'm definitely gonna start on the Wii U one because it sounds like the touch stuff is, if you're gonna, you know, if you don't have a choice, this game is wonderful on any platform. But if you have the choice, you know, to play it on one that actually has the touch controls. And I've also, like, having just finished Earthbound, and there's a story on the site where I talk about having finished the last bits of that game. I've, like, just around my parents' house just been plugging the Wii U in wherever I just kind of be hanging out that afternoon. And I just kind of be plugging away at the game. And that's been really awesome. Like, it's sort of crazy that I'm lugging around this console so that I can do it. You know, I wish I could. I would pay $100 to buy a bunch of little satellites that I could just place around the house so it could beam the signal. And I'm sure in like 10 years we'll have devices that can do just that. But for the time being, I am totally imagining how awesome it would be to be, you know, watching a terrible new episode of Dexter, but we're so close to the end, so I'm watching it anyway. And wouldn't it be wonderful to be watching and playing Rayman Legends as well? So I think that's probably where we're going to end up playing it.
I mean, I'm with you on the second part of that. I think I would skip the awful episode of Dexter because I have not watched an episode of Dexter since like season 3. So I'm pretty well off that shit.
I like watching how shows end. So what I tend to do is when they get really bad, I throw them to the side, and then I come back once they have an end date, and then I just find, you know, I won't use up what I find, what I guess I would call precious, valuable time to watch them. But when you, I don't know, when you've got free time that you don't really care how you spend it, just sort of like slowly catch up on a show so you have some sense of what's happening. And then I like to at least watch the final season. So like True Blood gave up on 2 seasons ago, but now True Blood is going to end next year, so I intend on watching that last season. Just because I think it is fascinating to see how different shows handle it, you know, especially as you're watching Breaking Bad sort of wrap up in the best way possible, and then watching shows just completely shamble to the finish line with bad acting and bad writing, and just, wow, we should have ended this 3 or 4 years ago, which is essentially Dexter. So,
you know, like Lost.
That was pretty good. That was pretty good. I can't even argue. I can't even hate.
I actually don't even hate the last season of Lost. I just like jabbing you with that one a little bit every now and again.
It's really easy. All right, let's transfer over to some headlines.
Yeah.
Do you wanna kick us off?
I don't know. There's some stuff to talk about.
Okay.
I feel like maybe now is the time when we can talk a little bit more about some of this Penny Arcade stuff in slightly more detail, because now the details are kind of more out there. People sort of know what happened. So
starting off on a big note, Alex Navarro.
Well, you know, it's kind of the biggest thing anyone's been talking about for the last couple of days. So, I mean, what I'll say is, so Mike Kralik, during a panel, straight up said he regretted taking out the Dick Wolves T-shirts when they produced them. It was something that, you know, a lot of people had sort of not necessarily applauded, but had been, you know, sort of thankful that they did when they did it a few years ago. And him kind of going back on that upset a lot of people.
When it was specifically him saying that he regretted taking them down, not that he regretted making them, was sort of the very specific detail that then caused a lot of the commentary over the last couple of days. Yeah.
So that happened. A lot of people became very upset. Several articles were written by various people saying, you know, either they're going to boycott PAX or they're in a conflicted place where they are thinking about doing so. Mike has since gone on to write another apology, of which I think he has written at least maybe 3 or 4 this year. This is a weird one for me, because as much as I have pretty much dismissed Kralik completely out of hand as far as someone that I would ever really want to pay attention to anymore, I sort of can't bring myself to completely just say, well, I'm just not going to go to PAX anymore, because that has a lot of different consequences to it and a lot of different implications to it that I'm not entirely convinced that I'm ready to just say, yeah, you know what, no, fuck that. I don't want to be any part of that, because I don't think it's quite as cut and dry to that. I'm kind of curious where you come off on this stuff right now.
I mean, I'm where you are, and I think that all comes from a place where, at least for me, it would be very easy to just say, screw it, all right, not go to that, but that we have so many people that support the site, that go to PAX and have a great time, and it is the only place where we can meet these people and hang out with them and show our support in person for what they do for us. And it's tough. It's like what PAX provides for us as a site and on a personal level, like I'm really thankful for. But then on sort of an intellectual level, I look at these comments that are being made, and I can't help but want to sort of just dismiss it out of hand and wash my hands of the whole thing. So it's really frustrating. I think that's where you see a lot of the tension come from when people are talking about it, is recognizing a lot of the good that PAX does do for people. And then, obviously feeling terrible for the people that go to PAX and feel it's an unsafe place, that they are unwelcome, or feeling that they are obligated to go there out of a sense of, this is a great place to show your product to gamers, but you don't actually personally feel comfortable or safe being there. That's a problem. And I think where I fall on this latest apology is that, I want to believe, but I don't. And it seems like an empty apology. He says all the right words, he hits all the right notes, but what has to happen going forward is showing meaningful change. And it's curious, because I think what's happening right now with Penny Arcade is, specifically in regards to Penny Arcade and their relationship with this expo they've created, is that they're going to potentially run into issues like this again, where what they want to say and what they want to do runs contradictory to what is necessary for running the safest, most inclusive convention, right? So,
yeah.
If they want to make dangerous comedic jokes, and that's fine, that's their prerogative. I am not interested in censoring their freedom of speech, and I don't have a whole lot of interest in debating whether or not it's okay or not okay for comedians to make rape jokes. I'm not a comedian, so I'm just not engaged enough to really have a whole lot of thoughtful commentary there. But I think that they are running into a problem where what they want to do as artists is running in conflict with what needs to be done for their convention. And I don't know how they resolve that contradiction, but I think that is where a lot of this is happening, is because they have the power to influence this convention, but this convention is kind of off here doing its own thing, and it's frustrating when the two overlap in problematic ways. And that's not an easy problem to solve, and to be a fly on the wall at the conversations they must have over how to handle that stuff. Given that when you watch that exchange happen on stage between sort of the three primary characters involved, you don't get the sense that the other two necessarily agree with everything that is coming out of one of their mouths, and yet they continue to work together. And maybe that is a contradiction that they can't really solve. So I don't know. Maybe at one point they spin off Penny Arcade Expo and it's branded and they're still there and they're still a big draw, but maybe they're not the ones organizing it. I don't know. I don't know what they do from here, but it's probably too early to say if that has any. I guess we should at least clarify that, like, this is sort of just our reactions to this stuff. This shouldn't be taken as sort of a site platform, and we'll. Anything like that is it's just way too early to even have those discussions. That's something we'll talk about if we talk about it closer to something like PAX East. But yeah, I think they're running into an artistic contradiction that is hard to resolve.
Well, they're also, and this is the inherent danger you run into when you craft a site around personalities. It's one thing if you're just like an editorial publication or whatever, and you're sort of not really it doesn't really matter who the voice is. It's all kind of one unified voice, and there aren't people kind of going off the rails and saying all these weird things that are inherently representative of the brand that you are a part of. It's something that, our site hasn't really run into problem-wise, I don't think, a whole lot. but it is something we've had to be mindful of because our personalities and our, existence is so inherently tied to what Giant Bomb as an entity is that anytime any of us maybe starts to go off the rails a little bit, that becomes kind of weirdly representative of the Giant Bomb whole, whether it should be or not.
Yeah, and that is that. Yeah, so when I go off and I'm talking about sexism, misogyny, like again, not necessarily representative of what everyone at Giant Bomb thinks, and that's what we try to impart in the site as much as we can. Is like it's kind of a platform for all of us to kind of just do what we want. We definitely talk about stuff, and we're definitely aware what everyone else is up to. But nothing about the content on the site is represents all of us. We are not edge in that respect.
But in that sense, when you put those personalities up to the front of the site, the scrutiny on those personalities and what they have to say becomes much, much, much more intense. And that's something that I don't think Kralik has ever gotten used to. It just seems like he's not into the idea. Like he considers any sort of form of criticism of his speech censorship. That's what he keeps saying over and over again: censorship, censorship, whatever. Whether you agree with that or not, I don't personally. You have to realize that when your voice is out there and you are saying things, especially when you are in a position of sort of power that he is in, anything you say will be sort of used against you, whether it should be or not. In a lot of cases, it's maybe often better to just not throw things out there like, about transgender people if you don't really understand what you're talking about, or, make random jokes about, people's reactions to, do I think the Dick Wolves thing was super offensive? No. Do I see how people could be upset by it? Yeah. Getting upset that people were upset by it and then kind of throwing that back in their faces and doing a whole big thing, like that whole handling of that situation forever has been bad. It has been bad.
He needs to be above that, and that is, if he wanted to stick by artistic intent and artistic integrity, that's fine. Then people could be upset, and that conversation can happen about his work. But instead, he chose to engage. He chose to get involved, and he came across as petty and sad. And I think a conflict, I don't want to get too much armchair psychology, but a conflict that he needs to resolve, which is something I work on every single day, is realizing if you are in a position of influence and power, that your words have consequences more so than others. And you can't pretend that you are not in charge of a multi-million-dollar company that has a hugely influential and impactful convention, and that the words that come out of your mouth are used and engaged with in ways that are very unlike anyone else. You are not a person that has 2 followers on Twitter and the only thing that your stuff goes out to are your friends. And I always kind of get the sense that the way when he ends up walking this stuff back a bit or trying to explain himself, is that maybe he hasn't fully embraced, and I can sort of sympathize with this aspect a little bit, is sympathizing with the fact that you are a super popular dude and that your words have consequences, and coming to grips with that and understanding what that means. But the problem is that he's done this a couple of times now, and at some point it becomes inexcusable to sort of walk into that trap over and over again.
At some point it becomes important for Ku just to say to him, look, I understand you have opinions about things. I understand you like being vocal about things. You are doing nothing but harm right now when you do this stuff. And I have to believe he's gotten a hold of him and said that to him at some point. I have to believe Jerry at some point has gotten a hold of him and said that to him. And maybe there's just no changing him, and that's fine. He is who he is, and that's that. But like I said, I've kind of written him off as someone that I pay attention to anymore. Like, I don't have any interest in his opinions or what he has to say, because he's sort of proven to me that he and I do not have similar viewpoints whatsoever or ways of handling things. So, it's unfortunate because I like what those guys do on, at least the PAX level, and like you said, it's early. We don't really know what this is all going to, kind of mean for how people treat this show in the long run, but it's unfortunate. It's sad. I kind of wish he would stop poking this hornet's nest and stop making a big fucking thing out of this, because he just makes it worse every time he opens his mouth or says or does anything. And it's just maybe time to just stop.
Yeah. So we'll see. This is an evolving story, and we'll see where this goes from here. Yep. But I want to be positive, but
same.
Definitely running out of reasons to be. So we'll see. Moving on.
Yes.
I find this interesting, and I have not really seen this before, is that the Mighty Number 9, which That's Keiji Inafune's, sort of Mega Man's successor, spiritual successor. Wildly successful. They've lowered some of the console stretch goals by $300,000. I have never seen that before, where they have, stretch goals always just keep going. But the idea that they have sort of looked at the money, run the numbers, and said, we can do this for less. Not only do I think that is super smart, because it makes a goal that people really want way more achievable, but I think that's a very respectful way to treat the audience, where if you are in a position to offer it for a cheaper price, that you do. Like, I don't know, that just seems like a really classy goddamn move on their part.
I have to believe it's one of those things where they looked at the numbers and they're like, well, we can do a lot of this stuff for cheaper than, perhaps what we were putting out there. And, they've already more than met their goal, which is great. Them doing more things like this to kind of, keep fan interest and, keep people wanting to donate and, adding more things to the whole project is fantastic. I sort of joked last time, it was like, do we really need another Mega Man game? But, at the same time, everything about this project seems like it's going in a pretty positive direction, and honestly, I'm letting myself get a little excited for it. I don't normally get excited about Kickstarter games until they're out and I can kind of see what they're like, and I go, oh, well, yeah, okay, this actually, FTL is a perfect example of a game I paid no attention to until it was out, and then I was like, okay, I totally would have supported this if I actually been paying attention to it before. Right. This is a game I'm almost considering supporting on my own, just because it sounds like it's going to be pretty cool. I don't know. I like it.
He's just such a nice dude, right? Yeah. Every time I've talked to that guy, he's just like, I hope you haven't lost it. Just like, man, I hope this is good. I hope this all doesn't just blow up in our faces, like, because he is genuinely just like, public and private personas can be different, but he always comes across to me as just a really, really nice guy with a lot of genuine passion for the industry and his fans and the games he creates. And like, this is a rad thing, and I really hope we get a cool game out of it. That's why it's heartening to see the stretch goals brought down, because it's not out of like, oh no, like, we're not going to hit our funding goal, because they did that. They're well past that. So to see them sort of dynamically changing it, I think is really encouraging. I guess they're at 1.727, and at 1.75 they get a complete making of documentary, and then at 2.2. That's when the current gen console versions happen, and then there are stretch goals beyond that, which they have not announced. And with 25 days to go, and the fact that it is really not slowing pace, I think they're going to be well on their way to, 5 to 8 million by the end of this, which is just crazy.
How do you think Capcom's reacting to all of this? Like the sudden influx of interest toward this thing that they are no longer a part of, with Inafune and what have you?
I think it just makes it awkward for whatever they have planned for Mega Man, because clearly they're going to go back to that at some point. I think this sort of makes it, when do you do that? How do you handle bringing that back? I don't know. I think it puts them in a very awkward position. There was a lot of questions directed to Inafune about, like, do you expect legal action from Capcom? And God would hope they do not move in that direction, because that would be about the worst thing you could do to sort of endear anyone. I think the best thing they could do is maybe to give it their blessing. I don't know if they can do that publicly, but whatever their, the fallout from sort of that breakup, I think the classiest thing Capcom can do would just be like, we're happy to see, someone who's contributed so much to our company to go off and be successful doing their own thing. And, we're excited to, show what Capcom has in store for the Blue Bomber going forward.
Which is probably not very much right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they do going forward. Like they've canceled, Mega Man Universe, that sort of Little Big Planet tool. That did not look very good, to be fair. Yeah. So maybe that wasn't the worst thing to have canceled. And with Inafune no longer there, you're certainly not going to make Mega Man Legends 3. So what they do from here, I don't know. Like, do you outsource it? Do you give Mega Man to like a way forward and see what they do? I'm not sure what the path forward is for Mega Man. They tried that 3D reboot that was part of a feature on Polygon. If you haven't seen the sort of Metroid priming of Mega Man, which people seem to hate. At least they were trying to do something cool with it, or interesting, maybe is the better word.
Yeah, they were trying to do something interesting. It's having seen that whatever that test footage was or whatever they put out for that, and kind of thinking about that concept more and more. I'm just like, nah. It's not what I want out of Mega Man. Which isn't to say that I have a whole lot I really want or expect out of Mega Man at this point. But as someone who was never as hot on the Metroid Prime games as everyone else was, I think I extra kind of don't want that. No, they're fine. They're not my jam the way they were for a lot of other
All right,
people.
well, at least you're not like Jeff, who just outright hates those games. I love Metroid Prime. At least I only played 1 and 3. I didn't play 2.
I played 1 and 2. I liked 1 okay. I thought 2. Like 2, I just quit like a third of the way through. I just didn't care enough.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, 2 was fairly divisive, so I ended up never sort of trying it all. But the third one was friggin' great with the Wii controls.
That's what I hear.
That series translated very well. So at some point, I need to go back and pick up that trilogy for the Wii, so I can play the first one with that. You got anything on your end?
Kind of curious what you thought about this one. Right. Not to keep getting into these sort of these particular types of issues, but
boom, you're going to talk about Hotline Miami.
I am totally going to talk about Hotline Miami too. News came out. Okay. There was a demo that was sent around for the press. You and I saw that demo at E3 for Hotline Miami 2. It included a scene where there is an implied beginning of a sexual assault of a woman about to happen, and then it cuts to a director yelling "cut" and yelling a bunch of sleazy things and all sorts of kind of unpleasant shit going on there. And some people took umbrage with this scene because, as much as Hotline Miami was an extremely violent kind of, generally unpleasant, had a generally unpleasant aesthetic to it, that was kind of a step further than anything they tried in the first game. And it was kind of weird to have that sort of just plop down in the middle of this, like, press demo. This scene kind of apropos of nothing in with the regular Hotline Miami hyper-violence. So some people became very, very upset by this. They didn't care for the way the game handled it or what it was doing with it. The developers have come out and said that they are re-examining the scene. They took it out of that demo and they are sort of rejiggering, trying to figure out like what makes the most sense. Now, you and I both saw this demo. We saw this scene take place. I remember watching it and going, "Well, that's something."
There was a woman in the room with us.
There was. Megan from Polygon was in the room with us, and none of us really batted an eye when we saw it. I think we both kind of looked at each other and went, "Huh, all right."
I think my feeling on that was I don't have a whole lot of context for this, so I don't know how to respond. The way they set it up is that a rape is about to occur, and then cut, and then there's a director, and they've talked about how they had a friend of the developers had a friend that interpreted the first game as a horror film. And so they wanted to extend that feeling, that analogy, much more explicitly in the second one. So I think this game is supposed to be in some ways sort of a commentary on what it's like to, it's like sort of voyeuristic and to watch and what the relationship is between the player and the viewer and the content they watch, which are some interesting ideas to explore. So I sort of brushed it to the side because I was like, I don't really know what they're going for here.
Yeah.
But certainly understand why someone could view that and then be like, what the fuck is going on? And I really appreciated, so there's a whole interview up at Rock Paper Shotgun where they talk specifically about this, and what I really like about this exchange is that the developers don't say we're going to take it out, or all they say is that this was clearly the wrong way to present it because there is more context for why this is here and why we wanted to include this scene in the rest of the game. And without the rest of the game in front of you, it's hard to understand that context. So, all the developers have said is that, okay, so this reaction has happened. That's not okay with us. Are there ways that we can change the scene, change the game to better have that scene make sense for what we want the player to come away with?
Sure.
And if there's not, then maybe they take it out. But I think this is the way this is supposed to work, right? Like, which is where a thing goes out there. An artist sees it, and games are very much different, I think, from other art forms but also aren't in that, there are focus tests, and you get feedback. Like, this is just happening in the public as opposed to in private, and the developer isn't saying, well, you know what, if people are offended, we're not going to put that in the game. All they're saying is that this is an interesting reaction. This isn't the reaction we wanted out of the player. How can we adjust the game to get more at our own artistic intent. And that seems like a really healthy dialogue to have about a scene that obviously provoked a lot of reaction from people.
Yeah, and I think that, my reaction watching it was like yours. I was like, well, I don't really understand why this is here because, as the developer said, there is a context for it, but they weren't presenting it. It was like if you showed a trailer for Irreversible that was just 2 minutes of the rape scene and like a minute of dialogue, and there was no context for how any of that was put together.
Right.
And with that kind of demo, it's hard to really parse what they're going for. I think criticism of something like that is valid. I think re-examining something like that is valid. I'm never going to say to someone who is if there is a context for it that makes sense within the scope of the game. And granted, it's an insanely violent and horrible game anyway. That's what Hotline Miami is all about. It's about people getting their skulls caved in with bats and shot in the face and just all sorts of just ill-ass shit happening all the time. I'm not saying this scene that we saw was any worse than really any of that. It was definitely an uncomfortable moment in a game that is generally nothing but uncomfortable moments, just of a different type. So in my opinion, I applaud them for examining it and looking for the best way to present, what they want, whatever story it is they want to tell. I understand also why some people were upset by it because, again, without any sort of context, that is a weird thing to just kind of insert there amidst everything else. I hope that, in the end, their vision lines up into something that is kind of provocative and interesting, the way the first game was.
And I think if this was all sort of kicked off by a really talented writer, Kara Ellison, who wrote about this, and this is sort of started the snowball of this conversation. If you go back and read her original piece, she is explicit about acknowledging the contradiction of what she's writing about, and
right.
This comes up a lot of the times in the conversation about Hotline Miami. And this scene in particular is, why is this too far when you're talking about a game that is about horrible violence over and over again? And she writes about that, and I think that's what made her piece interesting was exploring what the lines are for each of us, and if that line is there for me, does that mean that line needs to be there for you? And why am I okay with this violence? And what does that say about me that I'm okay with that violence and okay with engaging with that? But then suddenly this piece is too far for me. And is that purely about my personal experience and not so much about what we should be drawing a line with in terms of what artists are allowed to put in their game? And she talks about in the piece, and I think that's what makes that piece so powerful, is acknowledging that, because that's immediately going to be the first piece of criticism to an article like that is, well, why are you okay with the violence? And she points that out and saying, like, maybe I shouldn't be okay with that, or if I am okay with that, maybe I should be okay with this. And instead that piece is purely about, this is my reaction, and she put it out there. There was no condemning it. There was no saying take it out. What happened after that was out of her control. And I think in terms of, this is, I feel like what criticism should be is having an honest reaction to something an artist created, and then the artist taking that, thinking about it, maybe doing something with it, maybe not doing anything with it. Maybe the scene is exactly as it is in the final game because they look at their game in context and say, this is what we wanted to do, and that's fine. Then people can approve or condemn that all they want, but the exchange of criticism happened, I think, in sort of the healthiest way possible.
And that's and that is the inherent thing when we're talking about criticism versus censorship. This is the problem that I think a lot of people don't understand. You can make whatever you want artistically. You can put whatever you want into your movie, your game, your book, whatever. You can make it as horrible and fucked up as you want. People have every right to criticize that. They have every right to say, I don't like this. Here's why this doesn't work for me. Here's why this makes no sense contextually. Here's why this offends me. Saying something offends you is not inherently a call for censorship. It is not a call to erase that thing, to get rid of it, to make it go away. It is. You can condemn it. You can say, I don't care. I don't like it. I think this is bad for this reason and whatever. But there's the big difference between actively criticizing something and actively trying to censor it. And I think this is the problem that a lot of people don't necessarily like. They conflate the two things in a way that doesn't really make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Anything can exist and should exist within the realm of art, and you can do whatever you want with it. And the consensus among people is what's eventually going to decide whether it's a success or a failure. If enough people don't like it, if enough people are offended by it, enough people don't care for it, then yeah, it's not going to work out. You're not going to sell a lot. It's not going to happen. But that doesn't mean that we are trying to censor you or get your thing taken away or have it removed from the greater pop culture consciousness. It's just saying, well, we don't want any part of this. And when I see people yelling about censorship and being too PC and being like, this is like, even writing like that, like you said, that woman's criticism was incredibly thoughtful. It made perfect sense. I understand why, I understood her juxtaposition between trying to understand the violent, like why she's okay with the violence and why this one scene was so bothersome to her. That's not calling for the game to remove this thing. That's not calling for the game to be banned or for any of that stuff to happen. It's just saying, hey, this made me really uncomfortable. And everyone should have that platform and every right to say what offends them and what makes them uncomfortable. That's part of being having that inclusiveness and having that sort of, that willingness to sort of listen to other people's opinions, that empathy. And I think that, so far the way the guys at Denison have handled it has been really good. So I'm hopeful that, in the end, their product is not negatively impacted by any of this, and they were able to contextualize what they wanted to say originally in a way that people will get and it will work.
Yeah, well said. And most of this covers most of the big news that happened this week. Controversy, drama in the video game industry.
I know.
There's some smaller stuff. I guess I'll point out at this point, if people want to ask us some questions as we wind down, because the Hangout lag is more so than our normal Twitch streams, go ahead and @ me in the chat. And for anyone watching on YouTube, if you want to participate, it's in giantbomb.com/chat. That's the chat that we check for questions. So shoot some questions our way, and there's a couple smaller headlines that we can talk about while we wait for those to come in.
Indeed.
There is a Dark Souls 2 beta happening soon. Alex, if you were offered the chance to play Dark Souls 2, would you do it?
No. I played Dark Souls for a little bit. It is not my kind of game. I don't like punishing games. I don't like games that make me angry in any way, shape, or form. I like happy things. I like Raymans. I like my Kirby Epic Yarn. I like things that are cuddly and soft, and also occasionally like sports. Some sports are fun. Other than that, Dark Souls doesn't do it for me. I don't think I would really want to play Dark Souls 2 personally. I know there are some people in the office who have a great deal of love for it. I respect that entirely. Not for me.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna give Dark Souls a solid shot later this year. Now that I'm back in a climate that has actual seasons, at some point it's going to get cold, and I'll have less reasons to go outside. And the winter seems like a good time to, at the very least, give Dark Souls an appreciable shot.
Oh yeah. That's definitely atmospherically a game that fits very much into the sort of cold, dank nothingness of winter. So good luck with that.
I think I may be treating Dark Souls similar to how I treated the last Monster Hunter, which is not to necessarily put it on my shoulders that I'm going to finish Dark Souls, but I would like to play enough of it that, like, I know what it is. Like, I played enough of Dark Souls to get a sense of, like, oh, okay, I see what this does for people, and then I sort of moved on. I played through the first boss, and I'd like to do more than that, sort of like maybe a preparatory, before Dark Souls 2. Just for me, it feels like there are just so many people that get so much out of that game. I want to go a little bit further to see if I can get that too. But I think similar to horror games, like if you don't go to games, if you don't want to go to games to feel stressed out, then like I don't blame you for not wanting to play Dark Souls, because a huge amount of playing those games, similar to horror, is being stressed out and frustrated and angry, and not everyone wants that out of their games, and I don't blame them for it.
Agreed. So speaking of Rayman, just from earlier, so the Vita version for some reason was missing a number of levels. These invasion levels, which are remixes of existing levels. They had previously advertised that the Vita version would be feature complete with all the other versions, and then those were just kind of missing, which is weird. And then literally the day everyone figured that out, Ubisoft came out and said that they are going to be patching those levels into the Vita version, which is going to add a whole bunch of like storage stuff to your game, which is kind of dumb. I don't really know what to say about this exactly, other than that's kind of weird and dumb, and I don't really know why that happened. But I just kind of wanted to point out that apart from that, the Vita version of that game is really great. And I hope more people play it, because goddamn it, the Vita needs games. And I think it's kind of a bummer those aren't in there from the beginning. You'll get those levels eventually, and you can play it on the Vita. More people should play on the Vita. The Vita's fun. It's a good system.
Do you know
for
if this?
games.
Do you know if the saves transfer between the PS3 and Vita versions?
I don't believe it is cross-play. It
Okay.
is they are specifically different versions for whatever reason, so you cannot do that. But Vita,
Mm-hmm.
eh,
Yeah. What does that mean? What
just
is
play
it?
the V. I want the Vita to succeed. That's what it boils down to. I want that
Okay.
system to
All
do
right.
well because I really like it, and I don't want it to just like be an abject failure.
I think the more time you end up spending with that system, the more you come to appreciate the parts of it that do work really well. I still think the interface in general is garbage. I hate those little bubbles on the front screen.
Yeah,
But it is a fine secondary portable system, and I think it does that role really, really well, which puts
agreed.
it pretty low on the priority list if you are just casually into games. But
Sure,
for the kind
sure.
of people that are watching a morning show about video games, it seems like the Vita is increasingly an interesting platform. And there was actually chatter in an interview this week somewhere with some Sony executive where they said they are seriously considering doing a PS4 Vita sort of combo pack, which I think is super smart. And
Yes.
had I sort of not found my way back to the Midwest with the Office Vita that I offered to return and everyone said, no, it's cool, that would have been the package that I would pick up. Because I
Yeah,
think the idea of putting those two together is so smart. Because then it also just makes that package really complete in terms of the ecosystem. If there's some sort of package, it's like, hey, you get 3 months of PlayStation Plus, a PS4 and a Vita for whatever that would come out to, like $650 or $700. Like that's a pretty damn good package, and
yeah.
you would get a lot of games up front right away for use on all of those machines. That would be pretty interesting.
Agreed. I got two more quick ones. I don't know if you got any more.
No, why don't you go through yours and then we'll jump to questions.
New mod, or I guess, internal created Infinity playsets have been released, including one that seems a little bit like Columbia from BioShock Infinite. Patrick, is this an effective way to teach children about racism and classism?
That was so weird.
I
I
know.
I thought that was an actual partnership and put up the video on the site mostly because Johnny was just
Well,
yelling
yeah.
into it, like screaming into a mic. They did not do any sort of audio balancing on
He
that
doesn't know how
video.
to do anything else into a microphone. It's
Well, the
great.
producer that was in there recording with him should have told him. But that's why it was funny, and I'm glad it happened. But what a strange thing, because then I put up the video and then realized as people were commenting on it that at no point do they actually say BioShock Infinite. Like, it's just weird. I mean, it's cool, I
Yeah.
guess.
Well, they keep saying Columbia over and over again. They say
Right.
Columbia, and then they mention an infinite something or other in one of the decks for that thing, and I'm just like, okay, yeah, you're really not trying to hide this whatsoever. I mean, it's a free download, and it was something made like by their internal group, like their mods or their like developer staff people. So it's not like they're really trying to profit off of this. It's just something someone made that people were able to download, which is cool. But at the same time, the way they're promoting it is maybe a little on the edge of like Ken Levine sitting somewhere with his arms folded, kind of just harumphing over the whole thing. And I don't know. It just seems like kind of a weird way to promote content that is not necessarily licensed, but also not really like officially anything. So I don't know. It's a bizarre gray area to me.
Yeah. It's
But cool, I guess. I mean, it's
Yeah.
cool that they're doing stuff like that. I just think that was a weird one to kick off with, especially considering that's an M-rated game full of racism and communist people being persecuted. And just did I mention the racism?
Ooh,
Oh God, so much
ooh,
racism.
oh. Is it hot in here?
Yes.
Oh wait, do you have any more headlines?
I have one more.
Okay, go for it.
Hayao Miyazaki is retiring. Patrick, name me your favorite Miyazaki movie.
Ooh, you know, it was Princess Mononoke for a long, long time, but I think Spirited Away
Sure.
probably is probably my favorite. I feel like this is a great time to go back and sort of explore his whole filmography, which I've not done. I got into Miyazaki as a result of all this chatter about Mononoke, which is kind of, is that where they first started coming out here properly in theaters with like the Disney partnership?
That was the first one I saw. in America with like English voice acting and all that
Right.
stuff. I went back and watched all the previous stuff after that. I don't remember if that was actually officially the first one or not, though.
Okay, but that's I feel like for a lot of people that was their first sort of experience with Miyazaki. I think maybe it was because it dealt with had a lot of violence, so it had, sort of had this appeal that wasn't just whimsy. But that was sort of up front my favorite one. But Spirited Away over time has sort of cemented itself as my favorite Miyazaki film. But I have not seen enough of his older catalog to sort of like say that definitively. And if he's retiring, that seems like a great time to go back and check that out.
Totally.
Um,
For me, it's Spirited Away second place, and then it's a tie at the top for Mononoke and Totoro, because Totoro is just
yep.
that. Just want to hug it. Just want to
You do?
hug that movie. Everything about it.
This is a good first question from. Oh, where is it? I lost it. Oh, here we go. AJ Man, 1101. A recent trend with Ubisoft seems to be hundreds of hours of game footage, trailers, and walkthroughs. Do you see this
Yes.
as actually working or fatiguing you on their games?
I see what they're trying to do, which is to keep their games in the collective consciousness for as long as humanly possible. Uh, they're when you look at something like an Assassin's Creed 4, a Watch Dogs, what are they? They're doing with Blacklist for like 2.5 years straight. Uh, they're trying to make sure that their games don't get forgotten. They're trying to make sure that there is always something out there for their games that is new-ish, even if it's the 75th time you've seen that cutscene from Blacklist. Like they're still gonna throw it in there. They just want to make sure that people are still aware of it, because there are so many games coming out nowadays. There's so much going on, and there's so many different products to compete against, especially in the holiday season. So you have to keep that interest level as high as you can, and with less and less, like magazine exclusives and other things to give to press to keep their their games high up on the interest list. This is the only kind of real method they have. Does it cause horrible fatigue? God, yes. Does it ever? By like the 12th Blacklist trailer, I was pretty tired of trying to come up with things to say about that game. And then they put out another like 24 after that. So it's like, I think that there is such a thing as overkill. I think they have maybe reached that point with Assassin's Creed 4. I think they are coming dangerously close to it with Watch Dogs, but have not quite breached the wall there yet. My suggestion to them would be maybe try doing one every few weeks instead of like literally one every week, because I'm pretty sure we have been getting links for like Black Flag trailers every week for at least a couple of months.
And they're not short videos, right? Like
No.
it's not like these are short vignettes of, hey, let's do a quick highlight reel of what it's like to get on a ship in Black Flag. Like these are sometimes 10 minutes plus of just raw footage. And I wonder if this stems from just, hey, look at the popularity of things like Let's Plays, where it's just like people like really extended walkthroughs. And on some level, I appreciate that because it gives you an actual better sense of what the game is. It doesn't feel as sort of PR scripted of like, let's make sure we show all the cool moments. I mean, there's certainly some of that happening. They are choosing what goes out there.
Right.
But you are, in some sense, getting a better, more grounded look at the game through lengthy gameplay footage. But yeah, there's just so much of it. I don't know. I would definitely throw that to the audience. There's probably an interesting story to be written there, because I feel like this is Ubisoft specifically that is doing this.
They do it the most. There are other publishers that like 2K, when they're really behind a game, like they will start throwing out a lot of videos for stuff, but they're not nearly as, I don't know if abusive is the right word, but that's the one that came to mind in terms of just like just fire hosing people with that stuff.
Well, it even gets to the point where we're looking. You and I are the ones who put the majority of the trailers on the site because we're up earlier, and it gets to the point where it's like, well, yeah, you want to show people more Watch Dogs, but like we already put up 3 videos this week.
Yeah.
Like,
what else do you have to show, really?
Right. And at some point, are you just saturating the market? But I don't know how much that is us, because we were sort of hyper exposed to a lot of this material, and we've seen the game at 3 or 4 different shows, and we've seen it for a couple of years. So I would definitely tell people think about that. Like, think about how that affects how you perceive these games,
Sure.
and send
It
me
definitely
maybe a PM on the site.
yeah, it creates some fatigue. It creates some. I mean, not that I was ever super interested in Black. In fact, I became way more interested in Blacklist once the reviews hit and people told me that game was actually good, which was surprising to me. But so far people seem to be really liking it, which is great. But by the time I had gotten to that game's release date, I was so tired of looking at things for it. And granted, this is maybe very specifically a problem for people who read video game websites every day, of which, that's relatively a niche compared to the overall market of people who are, playing video games and buying video games. So maybe, the super hardcore audience is super sick of it. People like us are sick of it. But, people who are just occasionally looking around for stuff and, coming across, oh, here's some Blacklist videos. I can see if this is any good or not. It's totally having the intended effect, and it's working. So that's maybe the counterbalance I would think about.
Hi, I'm Rob points out a news story that wasn't on the podcast and we somehow missed was the Xbox One release date. Was announced this week. For was it November 22nd, right?
I don't really see what the big deal is, to be honest with you. I think it's passé. It's old. It's no big deal.
No big deal?
No big deal.
So in the U.S., the Xbox One will be a week after the PS4.
Yes.
In Europe, the PS4 will be a week after the Xbox One.
Right.
Which is interesting largely because Europe is usually seen as sort of Sony's territory. So maybe it is advantageous that Xbox One is getting sort of a week one foothold in terms of sort of the PR ramp up for people paying attention to these new consoles. I don't know how much that week makes a difference. I think that makes for very fun speculation and forum fodder. But at the end of the day, both of these machines are going to sell out their launch allocations.
I read something that Microsoft is trying desperately to make sure there are at least some units on shelves, like for people who want to line up and do the last minute thing. But it sounds like their supply is pretty low, and I don't know if Sony's even really worried about that at this point, so much as they are just getting all their pre-orders filled. So.
Yeah, my PS4 pre-order is not day of. It is like
mine is
mine's I think 3 days later.
Okay.
Like which is fine.
Yeah.
There's going to be enough going on that that doesn't worry me too much. But yeah, my Xbox One, I got one of the day one editions of those, but my PS4 is a couple of days later. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. The release date stuff, it's not gonna. It gives us a snapshot. Yeah. But they're gonna sell out, and there's gonna be so much twisting of numbers that it's not gonna be until early 2014 when we get a better sense of how all of this is sort of shaking out. Because unlike the Wii U, like both these machines are going to make a splash just due to the sheer amount of marketing that is going to be happening to make people excited for it.
What it tells me is that November is going to be a gigantic shit show.
Yeah.
More so than any November we've had in a very long time. So strap in, motherfuckers, because it's going to be a thing.
It's going to be exciting, too. People are asking whether there are going to be console launch streams. You are making plans for content that we do not think that far ahead, but I would say it is a safe bet that there will be some big deals made about both of those machines in terms of live video content.
Yeah.
This seems like a fairly easy thing to promise out loud without having had a meeting about what we're doing or not.
Yeah. There will be stuff. We'll do some stuff. Yeah.
You'll be doing a lot of reviews.
Oh god. Yeah, it's great that I'm getting the day one console because, then I can only be a few days late on reviews as opposed to like a week late.
So yeah, we'll see. We're starting to get some of the first chatter and indications of how that stuff is going to play out, specifically for us in the press. For us, not so much because we're not getting like press units sent to us. That's not happening. Those are going to the office. So yeah, but it sounds like that stuff's going to come in hot. Which
real hot
is not a surprise. So I think with that, that's going to bring our week to an end. I think that's going to be a show. Hopefully the audio issues figured themselves out. Apologize to people if they had to refresh the chat or if that got them to say, F these guys. I don't want to reload this page. I don't blame you. I wouldn't blame you one bit for saying F these guys. Yeah. So yeah, we'll be back on Monday. Hopefully some stuff happens over the weekend.
If it doesn't, I don't suppose you have any emergency guests hanging on just in
I
case.
don't know. I really need to start planning these things better
Yeah,
in
I should.
advance. But I'm sure that's a refrain I'll be saying every Friday that I should
Yeah.
plan more in advance. And instead, I'll just worry about it at 9:10. It's like, oh wait, we have to do this in 20 minutes. Um, so yeah, so appreciate everyone tuning in. Everyone have a good weekend. Are you playing anything specifically this weekend?
Well, so yeah, I just got this copy of NHL 14.
Hey.
I gotta get that together for the review embargo, which is 2.5 hours ago.
Oh,
So
great!
I should probably
Wow.
start working on that. Other than that, I'm gonna finally jump in on some Saints Row 4. I played Gone Home already. That's something we could talk about on Monday if we want to
All
talk
right.
about some stuff. I have some thoughts on that whole thing, which I would like to engage you with. But other than that, I'm just gonna watch some fucking football.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
Sundays don't exist anymore at
I
all.
know, right? It's great. It's great to not have to worry about what you're doing on Sundays because your Sunday is already planned for you. There's all this
Well,
football. You just have to watch it.
and also, I mean, this is more applicable to you and I because of the way the time zones work out. Man, those last football games, they don't end till late.
No, no,
Like,
that was something when I first moved to Boston. I started trying to watch football games. I was like, holy shit, it's like 11:30 and this is still going.
Yeah.
I have to go to work tomorrow.
Yeah. I am looking forward to that, and I'm glad that because of Peyton Manning's historic 7 touchdown game, I don't even have to worry about one of my other leagues. Like,
Yeah, I got
guess
Demarius Thomas in our league, so I'm good.
Oh, there you go. There you
Yeah.
go. All right. Well, everyone else, enjoy your weekends, and we will see you guys bright and early again on Monday morning. So, all right. Bye, Alex.
Bye.